welcome everybody to our curriculum committee meeting. And first and foremost, I want to welcome our new assistant superintendent, Corey Gillette, who will be our main speaker and our esteemed colleague visiting us tonight.
Thank you.
It's been a while since we've come together as a committee. So I think the first thing I'd like to talk about is the goals. And I think I sent it to all of you, although late, because I realized they couldn't read it in the form I had sent it. But we, the committee who existed last year, came up with these collectively. And I'm not going to go through the purpose and all of that, but I think the goals really sums up who we are and what we're hoping to get done as we move forward with this committee. And I'll just read it to you quickly. The goals are to support the district's curriculum goals so that all Ridgefield students make a consistent academic growth and are provided with the enriching and developmentally appropriate curricula that can be differentiated for students' learning styles. So tonight we have a robust agenda with a lot of items, but the purpose tonight, and we also, thank you, I forgot, I want to welcome Ellen Tuckner, principal from Veterans Park, also who's going to be here as a professional to talk about what's going on. There are some of the things that we've been talking about over the years, which we want to add to the Ridgefield community. And everything that we're talking about, particularly with the first one, will be are included in the district's goals for working not only in terms of our budget, but also in terms of professional development. So at this point, I just want to turn it over to Corey Gillette, and she's going to talk. And as she talks, this is a time for people on the committee to ask any questions after she's finished, because we want to be, the more we are knowledgeable about this, the more we can talk to the community about what's going on. Thank you.
Great. Okay. Good evening, everybody. Thank you, John. So before we get into the 4 main items that we're going to discuss tonight, I want to just go back to our curriculum goals. So next slide. So really, since I'm new here, these district priorities were already defined before I came, and they're in the document that you've seen many times, the district priorities document, and this is the section under teaching and learning goals. So these goals include the study of current curriculum structures and materials, reviewing student data in order to identify what needs we have across our curriculum, analyzing and obtaining stakeholder feedback on curriculum at all levels, identifying what immediate needs we have in our curriculum. And really, all of this work is done with the goal to create effective systems and structures that are transparent and communicative, tricky word, to all. And that includes teachers, administrators, parents, and the community members. So you'll see tonight, as I talk about 4 items, that they all relate back to this original document and the original priorities outlined there, even before I came. But as we move forward with this committee into the spring and over the summer and the fall, some of those items and goals will adjust as I get to understand the district better and as I engage in all those priorities that were already outlined. So the first thing that I want to talk to all of you about is the implementation of a phonological awareness resource at the elementary level. So this resource and this implementation process really happened before I came to Ridgefield. One of our schools had discovered this resource and was using it with great success. So phonological awareness is a foundational skill for learning how to read. And it's the kind of teaching that usually takes place in pre-K, K, and 1. And students use that foundational skill to build all their other reading skills on top of that. And what it does, and I do have Ellen Tuckner here from Veterans Park, who, when we have our conversation, can talk more about PA specifically, but what it's really about is students' ability to hear and manipulate sounds. So this resource was already in place in the district. All of our teachers believe that it's important, but our teachers across the district have been having to find a lot of the resources on their own, and that takes time. And because one school really got invested in this resource, the district decided that this was a resource that everyone would benefit from. So all teachers in pre-K, K, and 1 right now have access to this resource. So our plan is that this spring, we're really having an opportunity for teachers to engage in awareness around this resource. So we're going to have a little bit of professional development, and then lots of opportunities for teachers to explore on their own. The implementation will officially begin in the fall, and that will be in grades pre-K, K, and 1. Our current goal this spring, and we really hope to make this happen, is that interventionists, special education teachers, and literacy coaches will be able to get the professional development this spring so that they can support the implementation in the fall. So let's just stop there a second and talk about that first item. So it's what I wanted to share with you was the plan for the phonological awareness implementation. So any questions about that?
I had a question real quick. I was just wondering what the resource is.
Oh, that's a good question. It is a resource designed by Hegarty. Is it John Hegarty, Ellen? Okay, thank you. I got a little panicked about the name. So John Hegarty has done a lot of research in phonological awareness, and he's created this resource that we believe is really easy to use, really transferable into classroom day-to-day use, follows all the systems and structure that we understand are important in phonological awareness.
Is it just two follow-ups?
Sure.
Is it a daily program that's structured? Okay.
Yes.
And does and so the idea is that then it will go into the other elementary schools in the fall?
Yes, all elementary schools. Yes, full implementation in the fall. Currently, some schools are using it daily. Others, everybody has the resource, but hasn't had the professional development in this resource specifically. They have the opportunity this spring to engage in some learning around it, and the full implementation with the full professional development will be in the fall.
And so just to clarify, it doesn't have a name, it's just the John Hegarty resource?
It's called Hegarty.
Okay.
That's his last name, yeah. Rachel, oh, I'm calling. Rachel.
Nora actually had one of my questions. I was going to ask about the daily program. And then I was just wondering, is there any type of assessment, either like informal or formal, in which our pre-K or 1 students take, or something that the teacher may do in the classroom that we could see if it is working?
Ellen, you want to talk about that? Thank you.
Sure. Yes. So this is a resource that's it comes with assessments. There are many assessments that are available that you can measure phonological or phonemic awareness, and it's really important. That's a great point, Rachel, that we do, and we look at it across the broader class, and then we also look at it for individuals. We can even dig deeper depending on the need. If we find that a child needs more work, we can assess exactly where. So it's just like any other kind of area that you want to assess what you teach to determine if it's working, and that's exactly what the program allows you to do.
Oh, okay, great, thank you.
And I just wanted to add one little thing to what Corey had said about the work in this area as primary for what we're going to go along with even before we get to our phonics work. You know, the National Reading Panel identified years back how critical phonemic awareness is. I know most of you on this committee are teachers, are educators, so I don't know how much you remember about those days, but it identified it as such a critical skill, and it became like, oh my gosh, because if a child couldn't hear the sounds of a word, then they weren't able to assign a letter or a sound, the letter sound to the word. So this became like such an aha as an explanation of why many of our children weren't learning to read, and it determined that they weren't able to hear. It was an auditory process, not a visual one. So being able to lay the foundation in this regard is so important. And more recently, we've even come to, it's old research that's come to the front about it's even more important than we thought in terms of people's ability to read fluently. It's such an auditory process. So we're so excited to be able to really give our teachers the foundational skills they need. As Corey said, they have a lot of that, but this will make it consistent and give them the theory behind why a day can't go by that they shouldn't do this. Because for 5 or 10 minutes of this work, we will avoid reading troubles down the line. And it's just such a simple but essential thing to do with our children.
Kathleen.
I'm just putting this out just for the public to ask this question, might have it in their heads, is as this is being done and these assessments are available, will it avail the pre-K K1 teachers the ability to not only intensify those children who struggle with phonemic awareness, but also look at whether there are underlying issues that might need more remediation?
Yes. Simply said yes.
Thank you. I just thought that would be
Yeah.
important.
Yes. Yes. Tina.
So first, thank you. I think this is great because my sister is a teacher. I don't have the teacher background as many of the people in this committee, but my sister is a teacher back home, and this is how they teach early reading,
Yeah.
Sounding out the words, reading. So I'm glad that we're doing this. Totally parent pushed question. How will this align? Teachers, you've heard about TC, the whole controversy or not. I've heard about it, but I'm sure parents will want to know how this aligns or does not align with the current model of teaching that TC or Teachers College, of how we, use that, at least at elementary school. Does it align? Is it a whole different program? Just as a layman, because I don't have your background. I'm just trying to understand as a parent.
Yep.
Because everybody talks about this and that's what you're aware of. So
Yep.
when we start something new, how this lines up. So
Sure. So I do want to say that we do have a full board presentation planned for this topic, I think in April. I don't have the date right in front of me, but so we will be elaborating fully on this. But just like we were saying, the name of this resource is Hegarty. This is a curriculum resource that supports phonological awareness. The units of study from TC are another curriculum resource that we use to support a lot of our comprehension work. And some decoding, but more comprehension than decoding. And then also a resource that we use for writing. So we are adding a common resource because teachers know this is important. They've had different resources. We're all going to use the same resource and really engage in a study of phonological awareness. And what happens sometimes, and even in my experience in the past, is that we really quickly move to a phonics program. And the phonics is at the point where you're starting to visually attach sounds to letters. This is all developing the ear. And if the ear isn't developed, if that skill isn't developed, if you cannot discriminate auditorily, then you don't have, it's like the building block to begin reading. So we're really taking our time to make sure that our teachers are all given every support that they need to develop this skill. And like Rachel was saying, bringing in the assessments from this tool that will provide that, I think it's 3 times a year. I don't want to misquote. I will talk about it more in the presentation to make sure that kids are making progress as they should across those skills. So I think I answered your question. Did you want to add more, Dr. De Silva?
No, you summarized it well. The full presentation of the board is May 10th.
Thank you.
It's okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
So Tina, the only piece that I'd add is just that it's important to understand the purposes of resources that we have, whether it's a phonics resource, a comprehension resource, and this particular case, a curriculum and instruction resource, they all have a different purpose, and this one has its own.
Nora.
Yeah, I was going to add on to Tina's a little bit, and what you all said, which I was teaching first grade just a few years ago, and while we had a different resource that we used for phonological awareness and phonics, it was separate from our units of study, but that actually works in those younger grades, and it would. I think it's actually the best way to do it. And so it can be really successful that way. But my question for Ellen was actually just what you love about this program. Just wondered like what you find to be some of the best qualities.
Oh, absolutely. I think the best quality about it is its simplicity, that it's completely laid out. Every day for the week by week, it's clearly laid out what the activities for the children are that day, and then the next day and so forth. The teacher doesn't have to dig for anything. It is all right there. So they can just pull it up, work off of it, and they make it their own. The kids have such a great time with it because it's so much fun to play around with words and sounds. And the teachers love it because of its ease and its simplicity.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you for asking that. So before we move on to the next topic, it's just so evident to me in Ridgefield, and I haven't been here that long, just how lucky we are with the human capital that we have in our schools. And I think that Ellen is a really great example of that we have such instructional leaders in our schools to help us implement and lead this work. So thank you, Ellen. Thank you.
Any other questions before we move on? Okay.
Thank you for having me. I'm gonna jump off.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ellen.
Thanks, Ellen.
So as we described, our real focus at the elementary level in primary reading is the implementation of the PA curriculum resource. But in the meantime, the other goal that the district had set out before I got here was to buy a aligned phonics resource. So in order to do that, one of the things that stakeholders across the board told me as I went on my welcoming tour or my getting to know you tour was how important it is to everyone here that teachers have a voice in curriculum selection, curriculum resource selection. So what we have done, and we're just at the very beginning of this, is we have created a collaborative action team. So it's another acronym, but kind of a cute one, CAT. So it's a CAT. And the goal of the CAT is to study Orton-Gillingham-based systematic phonics resources. So this committee is going to have teachers, administrators, interventionists, coaches, special educators, and district curriculum leaders. And this group is going to study a couple different resources. We're going to see what they look like when they're implemented in schools. We're going to study, and at the same time, we're still learning about PA, which is the foundation that phonics gets built on top of. Then this committee, this representative committee, is going to recommend which resource that we are going to purchase as a district, and then what that implementation plan is going to look like over the next 3 years. So as much as we understand how important this work is, we also know that creating that foundation is super, super important. So the team is going to decide what that timeline is going to look like. And really, honestly, hopefully moving out of COVID and really getting time for professional development, assuming all those things are in place, these are our next steps. So I just wanted to share with the committee that this is the plan. This is where we are so far. We're just collecting members for the team. The first meeting of the collaborative action team is on the 19th of April.
Corey, just to clarify, the CAT, the collaborative action team, obviously it's in this case, it's looking at phonics, but is this the system or structure that would be used for the study of any program or resource or curriculum work?
Yes. And really, the purpose is that teachers and different representatives are working together to study something. And usually I know it best around curriculum, but it can be used around other topics. So studying different resources, coming up with criteria. And then, of course, we're going to ask this team to come up with an implementation plan so that we'll make sure that we have teacher and administrative and different support staff to have their voice in how this goes. Any questions on this? John, you want to take it off for a minute? Nora?
I had a couple questions. It sounds awesome, first of all, but so I wondered, will the CAT team differ for each sort of goal or adoption of new piece of curriculum, or will it always remain the same group?
That's a good question. I think, some teachers may end up being on multiple CATs, but it really is teacher choice, who from your grade level is the most interested and available to put in this extra time to study the resource. We made sure that we had at least one teacher from each grade level from each of the 6 schools. At this point, that's how big it is. Yeah.
Okay. No,
Yep.
that's excellent. And I had one other question,
Sure.
which was, so with something like this first one with the phonics, would you, do you think that, because I think it would be important, but I'm sure you've thought about this too, but would it be in place so that teachers could try out some of the different platforms with students versus just looking over the materials, because that's such a huge difference?
Yes, that is a goal of ours, that we're gonna, as we form the CAT and then lay out our goals and objectives for how that committee works. One of the things that I've seen work really effectively is just that, is giving teachers opportunities to try with real kids in a real setting what the different lessons look like and how kids are responding. And usually it's done with like a unit or a part of a unit, a small part. So it's not taking the teacher off of the skills that she would teach, but she would use the tools of that curriculum resource instead of the other resource that her grade level team is using. So yes, that is a very important part. So their role isn't just as researcher, but really as teacher practitioner.
Thank you.
Sure. Rachel. There you go.
That sounds great, Corey. I just, so if I'm hearing you correctly, then the opportunity then for vertical alignment would be there, right?
Yes.
Because you're going to have teachers from all different grade levels. So what they're seeing up here and what they're seeing over here, and then
yes,
that alignment. So that'll be good.
Yeah, so it's alignment, vertical and then across all the schools.
Oh, that's great.
Thank you. Kathleen, did you have a question?
I have no questions because we've already spoken, but again, I support this. This is such important work and I applaud all that's being done, but.
Great.
Corey, if you don't mind, if just so that I'm asking them, not because I don't know all the good work you've done, but more just for the sake of the public.
Sure.
When you speak about the studying of a phonics program that has an Orton Gillingham Foundation, can you just speak? I know we're going to have a full presentation on May 10th. Can you just speak to like a minute why that piece is critical? Because you're being very specific in terms of what you're studying. So tell us just like 2 minutes, just maybe you could tell us a little more about why and why that's important, and just maybe connect it with intervention if possible.
It's a big question. Okay, I think simply, it is true that using those words does make the pool of resources that we could study smaller. So it is saying that the kind of resource that we and research believe to be the most effective for phonics is one that follows the scope of Orton Gillingham. So they're a theoretical understanding of how kids learn how to read, and then different curriculum resources have taken their theory and created actual day-to-day resources for teachers. Because at the end of the day, when you're an elementary teacher and you're teaching 6 subjects, to create lessons for every single day is a lot of work. So the resources that we're looking at use the Orton-Gillingham philosophy, the structure, the scope and sequence, the way that they go through teaching the different patterns, and also making sure Orton-Gillingham lessons also make sure that kids are both reading and writing, decoding and encoding in every lesson. It's just part of their approach, and research does support that approach. So really what that does for us and the CAT is it does narrow down which resources we will actually study, because there are some phonics programs that are not Orton-Gillingham based or are loosely Orton-Gillingham based. So that was a way for us on the even before we created the CAT, we did narrow down that search.
Thank you.
Kathleen.
I'm going to add on to that just again for
Sure.
for the question of the broader public, for those parents who hear the word Orton-Gillingham and feel very relieved, but for the other parents whose children have never needed that kind of systematic instruction, just speak briefly. I know you'll do it in your long one, that it can service all children depending on their learning style and differentiation needs.
I don't know. I think you said it. It serves all children because if you were like me and I was raised at a time when I was not taught any phonics, oftentimes your spelling suffers, even though I am an amazing reader. So it serves many students at many levels and really helps them regardless of how well they can read and how well they can spell. When they get stuck and come to a word that they have trouble with, it gives them tools to access that. And that even shows up in older readers when they're addressing multisyllabic words to spell or to read. Okay, anything else about the CAT? Okay, so let's move on to the next one, John. Okay, so another curriculum goal was related to curriculum review. And one of the areas that we had discussed as a priority area for curriculum review was the essentials. And by essentials, we mean art, music, PE, and library media. So I just wanted to update the committee on where we are with that work. I've only been here, I don't know, 7 weeks, but we already have done some work on this. What we wanted to figure out, starting with the K-5 level, was where those departments that I mentioned were in terms of their goals, their curriculum memorialization process. We wanted to find out what their long and short-term goals were. And then based on this experience in COVID, we've all come away with new insights about teaching and learning. So based on this experience, what are some resources that they feel are now essential in their curriculum area? So on the last asynchronous day, these teams met as departments and they had a long team conversation across all 6 elementary schools, and they did document all of these goals. And this work is going to help us this summer set up K-12 teams, which are going to be led by a curriculum leader or someone who is going to help us with that work, perhaps a specialist in their area. And then we're going to work on mapping out a plan for what that K-12 curriculum development looks like. So I just wanted to update the committee on that. We're working on it, and the departments really are in different places. Some of them have some pieces of this completed and others have other pieces. Other of them have more cohesive K-12 work, and they're in different places. But this was our first step in identifying where they were, what their needs are, and then what the next steps will be. Any questions on that? Thank you. Thanks, John. Nora.
May as well ask one.
Sure.
I was wondering, is the hope that the essentials, we call them specials, but will be back in their own classroom next year, or is that just kind of up in the air and wait and see how that goes?
I can jump into this one, Corey.
Sure.
It's a little bit of a wait and see, Nora, but I would probably say at this point, we're anticipating that they would be back in their classroom based on the trajectory that we're hearing. That said, there may be classrooms that require the larger spaces that we've used this year, for example, because of just the number of students. Let's just say, you know, a third grade class that is at maximum may need, and they're in a smaller class, and to be able to socially distance with greater ease, we may need to borrow another space, which might mean that we're doing a little bit of reverse spacing or reverse learning spacing. But outside of that potentially being an area of concern, Nora, our hope is that our classes will be back into their home spaces.
Thank you.
So I guess just to extend a little bit more, that the departments are excited about this opportunity. And as you know, the fall, the spring, the fall, all of this work that our teachers have gone through, teaching kids in front of us, teaching kids on the screen, the opportunity to start thinking about curriculum and resources and plans, even though those plans may not be as typical as they always are for September, this is exciting for us and exciting for our departments. And the departments are really excited to engage in this work with their colleagues and to continue to build a memorialized curriculum together. So it's a very positive process. Okay, so then we can go back to the last item, which is very exciting. It's very exciting, and I don't have a lot to report on this, but I will be reporting on this next Monday night, so I'll know a lot more. But the task that I was given with colleagues was to create a highly engaging, interactive, academically supportive opportunity in order to bring our K-12 students back together in person on school campuses for sessions in June and July. And that these sessions, these opportunities to be together, to be device-free, to engage with our peers, to engage in community service, to cook together, to do yoga, to plant gardens. This will come at no cost to students and families. So what our work is, and it's very exciting work, is to figure out what this looks like across the different levels. What does this look like for elementary students? What does this look like for middle school students? And then what does this look like for high school students? So that is the work that we, as a pre-K-12 community, have been trying to figure out in the last couple of weeks. But we're very excited to be working on this, and we feel like it is such a great, exciting opportunity to be able to offer to the community and to our kids, who we feel like need more of this, that time together, time to be off your screen. I mean, imagine working in a garden at East Ridge Middle School as part of a community service project during the summer for a couple weeks, in addition to maybe doing a little extra reading and math work. But it's really about that experience, right? Of being together, being outside, using the facilities that we have, using those tents, playing a little kickball when you get dropped off in the morning, just trying to get some of that back for our students. John, can you take us off? So that's just a tiny preview of what we're going to be presenting next Monday night as we continue to try to flesh out what this could look like at the different levels.
Corey, why don't you talk just for a minute about what you anticipate in terms of a timeline for families? I know all of it's coming very quickly, and just to give the committee a little bit of perspective is that typically a summer program, the way in which my colleagues here are developing it, takes a year to create, right? Because you're creating sessions, you're creating creative sessions, K-12, you're looking for educators that want to prepare and engage and teach, then you're looking for student enrollment, then you're finding the space, then you're allocating the materials. And my colleagues have to pull this off pretty quickly because the other variable here is that some families may already have plans for summer and holiday. Other families may not, because not all of the same resources that would have traditionally been available are available now. But there's a reality to how quickly this has to move in order for families to plan. And we're hoping that we get the enrollment for kids, because what we'd really love to be able to offer them is not just coming to summer school for the purpose of learning acceleration or remediation, but really just an opportunity to come and engage in things that are fun with learning, but also just some social experiences. Whether they come for an hour session to play board games outside, to just be engage with other peers that they haven't had the opportunity to engage with, or get a sense of just socially connecting the kids, yes, in an academic experience or in a book club or around an academic area, or manipulating numbers, but not in the same way that you might be doing that right now, right? So a different kind of experience, again, in these summer sessions that are expected to be about 2 weeks in length, so 3 2-week sessions, but not easy to pull off as quickly as this team will have to, quite frankly, to get it up and ready.
Right. So at this point, we have the first thing we had to figure out is if we had a staff to teach, and we do. The teachers, like I said, the human capital here is really amazing. And not only did our teachers volunteer, but they gave us a ton of creative ideas that we had not thought about in terms of different course offerings. Because trying to get, I have a 15-year-old. So thinking about what would make my 15-year-old want to go back to school for a few hours in June, you have to think outside of the box. And maybe TikTok is in front of it, but maybe that's okay. Maybe they're dancing. Do we care? No, we don't, because we want them engaged. We want them together. That social emotional component is so important. So we found out that we have staff. So that's very important. So we have enough staff for K-12. The next thing that we're working on is trying to give those structures, the elementary, middle, and high school levels, some color, and thinking about, well, what could that look like, and how could we write an elevator pitch for each of those different levels. And in doing that and having those conversations, we are starting to pull out like the idea at the middle school level of some community service. So if and this is all rough draft, but say I'm a middle school student and I'm in the first session in June, from June 17th to June 30th. During that time, I'm doing a little bit of math work, a little bit of English, but really my grade level is focusing on a community project that's the front garden or something. And there's something that's tangible that the students are working on during that short session. And maybe there's a theme for that session that connects all the different service projects. And also there's some art or music or cooking or something that they're engaging in as well as the academics. So really we've been working together as groups, and we have leaders to take over each of the levels to flesh out what is that going to look like. The high school level is a little bit trickier. Like I said, trying to think of ideas. We're kind of imagining, when you get your Parks and Rec menu of all the different courses that you can take in the summer, and you open it and it looks so good. There's cupcakes, and then there's guitar. And there are different sessions, different times, and one is for 4 days in a row and one is for 3 days in a row. So we're kind of playing around with some kind of structure like that to really get the interest of our high school students. We're talking to their teachers, some parents, some kids, and trying to figure out what, like I said, is it besides TikTok, what is it that we can get to bring them in, even for short amounts of time. I don't want to be too ambitious, but then once we add a little more color, then we're going to send out surveys to parents and give them more information about those exact session times. Our hope is that June 17th is when we can begin in June. And we're looking for the K-8 level to be 3 to 4 hours. We haven't figured that out at a time. And then, like I said, high school might have a bit of a different structure, but it would be at no cost with lots of different elements that would go in the programming. Parents would need to bring kids. So we've thought about just structuring the day, because then you need a nurse, you need, all these other things that make running a school that you almost forget about in the summer. All those same needs exist. So those layers have just continued to expand, but we're hoping in the next 2 weeks, 3 weeks to be able to send out to parents a sign up. But I think before then we'll be able to give them a save the date that you should be able to expect in the next week and a half, a save the date, with at least that elevator pitch that gives you some idea of what you're saving the date for, with more info to come. Kathleen.
Just quick, because I know you're going to present at the board and these are going to be questions and you don't have to answer them fully. Two things that I know that are going to come up are, first of all, is this budget funding or is this grant funding or is this COVID funding, or, and you don't have to go into detail. And the second one is, would there be busing?
Okay, so I can answer both of those, I think.
Yeah.
For this year, June, the last remaining days of the school year, that will be our operating budget. So any savings that we were able to occur from this year, we're gonna navigate that with the last however many days. It's 12 days in theory, but 2 of them will be for prepping the building.
I think it ends up being 10 days of kid time.
Kid time will be 10 days, 12 days total. So one of those days is like moving day and, preparing the classrooms and the spaces. The second day will actually be more around professional learning, making sure everybody knows that, like Corey said, you're rebuilding a school, right? These could be individuals who would never put their feet in that building before, and all of a sudden are there. They need to understand where the emergency routes are and all of the things that come with school. Again, can't be overlooked. So after that, those 10 days or 12 days really are going to be this year's operating budget, meaning fiscal year 21. Once we hit the summer months, that will likely be grant funds that we'll use. So you might remember we've spoken about the ESSER funds, and those 4 priorities, the first priority being learning loss, second priority being social emotional needs, third is technology, and fourth is lots of other COVID things. So obviously, if you're an educator, you're prioritizing your funds on 1, 2, and 3.
Mm-hmm.
And so over the next, I think, a couple summers, we're going to try to target gaps that will become more and more obvious, I think, over time for kids. And whether those are emotional gaps, social gaps, academic gaps. And again, it's not about looking at it through a deficit model, but rather about accelerating what we need to accelerate and prioritize. But that's the plan. So for this year, the last 10 days will be operating budget. Summer will be likely our COVID relief ESSER 2 monies. The second question you actually asked, Kathleen, was around busing and transportation. So actually another board member had brought up the idea. So funding for transportation is difficult, but also just navigating it in the summer months and the number of kids that might be engaging. So we thought about like different pickup spots, because actually a board member had indicated that might be a good idea. I'm not sure that it would make sense, just given where our site locations are, and before we share too much, because I just want to make sure Corey has, again, we're working very fast, and in many ways we're building the plane as we are flying it.
Very much.
But we're going to do it well, because I know that that's the only way we do things as well, and it's going to be fun and engaging for kids. But I don't think that the transportation will make a lot of sense, just given where the locations of the schools are and how that will work itself out. And trying to navigate the age groups and all of that. I think by the time you find up drop off locations, you may as well bring the kids to where they need to be. Right. And because it is a general education and special education support system, it's for all kids. It just may be too challenging to try to pull off, and I'm not sure that we could do that piece. So as for transportation, right, that's right now it's on the side there. There was another. So with respect to our update on Monday, April 5th, I believe is when we'll update the board. It will still be very overview-ish. And I think you're going to get a little bit more than you're getting right now, but not too much, because I think that we'll still be working through a lot of the details. But we at least wanted to make sure that the board was aware of the days, answer some of the questions that just came up now. So that when we do begin to publicize this for families, they've had the Board of Education and the public have at least heard the broad strokes picture of what we're planning for. Yeah. And again, we have the benefit this year of those 12 days in June that we haven't had in the past. 10 days for kids, 12 for faculty. So I think as a result of that, we're being really smart with supporting kids as much as possible. And for some families, I think having those 10 days in June will be what they can do, because then they go off to holiday or camps or things like that. And in many cases, families have already, it's just kind of the structure that people are that are aware of. You don't plan holiday until July or camps until July, because there's, you never know when the school year is going to end. So I think that's and I think many camps know that as well, right? You start either the last day of June, when the buses pick up the campers, or right into July. Right. So I think we're pretty safe to have a population that's available for us in June. And I think for those families that aren't doing that or aren't in camp, we'll have those 2 separate sessions in July offerings. So they can do the first 2 weeks, they can do the second 2 weeks. They collectively could do all of them. And I don't think that we're necessarily prohibiting them from doing that. Am I right, Corey?
Not our plan. It's open.
Yeah. So if kids want to engage and we have the ability to offer things that are exciting to them, I'm assuming they probably won't want repeats, but you never know. So if we're able to, and it makes sense to do so, it all will depend on student enrollment. And so that's part of the reason it's kind of tricky right now, is when we know exactly how many kids, our plan A site might work just fine. If not, we might need an A and B. And we have that in our minds and prepared to do what we need to do to try to get our kids here and offer as many opportunities as we can.
Yeah, really, once we know what our populations are going to look like in terms of numbers, then we can really develop our work. But it's a little tricky at this point.
The other piece is that because our faculty really outside of extended school year have not had the opportunity to teach for the Richfield Public Schools. So this was new in terms of reaching out and seeing who was willing, who wanted to, who was, available. And then the added benefit was that Dr. Hanaway and Corey had an extra question that asked them about their ideas if they were to run a session. And then the creativity, once you ask teachers, there's just so much that comes from them. So I anticipate that that's just going to keep getting better and better. So it's, again, we're lucky that this year savings within our operating budget allowed this to happen at no cost. And coupled with that, our grant funding will add an extra boost right in the summer, which makes a lot of sense for our kids.
Thank you so much. I applaud the innovative thinking for all of our students, but anybody else have questions? I'm sorry.
No, I mean, I just wanted to say, I think this is a great idea. I really do. I think it's a wonderful opportunity, but mine is just a simple question. This opportunity is for all kids, because when you hear summer school, everybody's like, oh my God, I have all A's. I don't need summer school. So this will be for all kids, right? I mean, I think that's the underlying message, especially adolescent age group. I have a 14-year-old. If I tell him you're going to school in summer, he's like, but I have this amazing report card. Why do I need it? I think that's the other thing, if we can help clear, like this is an opportunity to build social, emotional, get back connected. All the 1 year that these kids have missed, right? They miss so much. Even, and I'm going to highlight this and I'll keep saying it, even freshmen, there are freshmen at high school who have not stepped into school. Yeah. It's a huge thing. They're going to be sophomores next year. So this is there's a huge learning piece they're going to miss. They've done everything online, and going to school will be a whole different experience, getting up in the morning, going to school, navigating classes. So I think this is great you're doing it. I really applaud it. I thank you. Thank you to all the teachers who've said, thank you for making this come together. So many thank yous, but also if you can share all this on Monday so that parents understand and can commit at this point, I mean, as much as they can.
Tina, I think you bring a really good point up, is that, again, that learning loss, sure, that's an important piece, and there's opportunities for that as well. And there's some creative ideas for that purpose, right? Or kids that want to just get an extra boost, whether it's high school, middle school, and they just want an extra boost. All of that's there. But in addition to that, it's like Corey said, it's that traditional kind of summer program that you open up and you're like, oh, that's an exciting course. And I could take that with a few friends from my high school, or, and we were talking about, Corey and I was like, I would take that. Yeah. I would be all over that, right? Because it's fun and it's a couple of hours of your day. And rather than, sitting home, let me go learn something new. And what a great opportunity. Sorry about that.
Yes, and I do think, Tina, that's why we're still struggling with names, what to call it, and the elevator pitch, because the vegetable is in there, so there is some of that opportunity for the academics, not for all grade levels, but that is there in K-8, but really there's so much more, and the creativity and the way that some middle school teachers are thinking about getting some executive functioning work in, you would not even know it was executive functioning. And I think it's connected to cooking. It's really, really cool. So I know the kid, I know the kid experience will be so good. So we have to just figure out what to call it, how to market it, because for kids, we want them to be there. And I know that once they're there with these teachers, they're going to love it. But you're right, getting them in the door and helping them realize that it's not traditional summer school. It's not. But that's why it's taking us a while to really get our even bridge. Is it a bridge? I don't know if it's a bridge. Is it a camp? No, I don't know if it's a camp. So then we keep going back and forth with the different names, and it's probably going to change by level actually, because the different levels are interested in different themes and advertisements and all that. Okay, well, those were my updates.
Any other questions? If not, I just want to first of all thank you, Corey, so much, and thank you again for Ellen for showing up and doing this, and of course, Susan, members of the committee. And this is all great work, and I look forward as you elaborate on this as we meet with the board, the whole board. And finally, committee, where I'm looking for dates that we'll have a standard date every month for the curriculum committee. I'm looking for a 6 o'clock time rather than a 7, so that we don't have that floating time. But if not, we may have to. So I'm working with Cheryl on finding a date that could be a standard date. So if anybody has any good ideas, let me know, because we're working on it. It's, believe it or not, it's not as easy as one would think. But I thank everybody. Anybody else have anything to say? Okay, I will look forward to seeing you on Monday night.
All right, thank you.